Hello, Missy. I'm so glad to see you.
I'm so glad to see you. Thank you so much for joining me today to be a part of my HellRaiser series.
I mean,
And
anytime I get a chance to raise hell with you, I'm there. I'm on it. I'm
listen,
I'm in.
I know what people missed before this is the amazing stories and all the giggles we were having before. So I'm sorry y'all missed that, but it was really fun. Sarah, amazing Sarah, tell the watchers, because everyone's gonna watch this, a little bit about yourself and who you are.
I am Sarah B Rawz. Rawz is like raw meat with a Z at the end. It's a made up name. That delights me.
It delights you because you get to say raw meat.
Exactly. Raw's like raw meat. Yeah, I'm a coach. I'm a business and empowerment coach, which is my snazzy way of saying that I help professionals see themselves more fully, mostly professionals, right? See themselves more fully, get out of their own way,
Love
live
it.
the awesomeness that they're here to live. My career is based on, it's basically based on a Tupac Shakur quote about he said, I'm not going to be who changes the world, but I am going to spark the person who will. And so I see my job as going out there and helping people ignite their sparks.
Oh my God. I love that so much. First of all, I think Tupac really did change the world.
He so did, though.
Like
He
there's
might not
so
have set out to, but he did.
no, he so did. Um, I didn't even not know any of these things, so I'm really excited that I not only know about your made up last name and Rami, but also that you brought Tupac into this conversation, which I mean, speaking of Hellraisers, like come on.
Oh my
So
gosh.
good.
Yes.
How did you get into your work? Like what sparked you being like, I'm gonna be a coach?
It was a sort of strange and magical journey, as most journeys are when we really pay attention to them, right?
Yeah.
But I had sort of an innate drive as like even as a wee little kid, like I always had these two-prong like desires for my life and my future. And one prong was to be self-employed, and the other prong was to be in some way professionally helpful, you know?
Hmm.
And then in my early 20s, this thing happened. And the thing was
As does happen in your early 20s.
all the things in the early 20s, right? Because we have lots of confidence and no sense. And it's a great place to be for a
Yep.
little while, right?
For
Like
just a
for
minute.
just our early 20s. And so I worked with teenagers, both volunteer and professionally. I worked with teenagers in the foster system. And I did not understand what a specifically challenging group that was. And it ate me alive because I did not have the tools and resources to deal with how ineffective I was inevitably going to be.
Yeah.
Like I wanted to whisk in there and make it all okay for these kids. And I wanted to give them hope and I wanted to, all the things.
Yeah.
And it's just not how it works with a 15-year-old in foster care.
Sure isn't.
Yeah.
No.
And I would get off of work or whatever I was doing and just cry my eyes out. And I interpreted that in that like myopic early 20s way as like, okay, I'm not capable of being a helper. I never at any point thought, oh, this is a particularly challenging place to try to be helpful. It was like,
Right?
nope,
You just think I am failing, I am failing,
I'm
I am
right.
failing.
I'm failing. I'm
Yes.
inevitably incapable of this. Done.
Yes.
And so then
Been
I was
there.
like, okay, turn off that channel, entrepreneurial channel, here I come. And I started opening businesses for the next 10 years. I opened four different businesses, right? Okay, that's what I'm gonna do. And they were all fine, right? They made money. I liked being self-employed, fine, but not
Sure.
fulfilling, just fine.
Right.
Networking the last business, which by the way was called Nary Ordinary Business Services, the acronym for which was no BS. And that was the theme of that business.
So good.
So I'm networking for that. I meet this executive coach named Kathy Baskey Young, and she goes, "You're a coach. Why are you fooling around? Go be a coach." And I was like, "On that, Kathy." And that was the conversation that we had for 2 years, where we would see
You
each
really
other.
got on it. You were like,
I was
yes.
on
No.
it. I was like, "You're speaking." No, it was like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna do that, Kathy." It was more what it was like, "Okay." And after 2 years, I had one of those moments, thanks to, in large part, to this incredibly powerful group of women in my life, who were helping me see possibility and see myself more fully. I went, okay, I'm gonna do this thing, And after 2 years, I hired my first mentor coach. I joined my coach certification program, and I started with my first client all within 6 weeks. Like it just,
Of course you did. Because the minute you made that decision, you were like, go.
It was on. And it has been over 7 years now, over 3,000 hours of coaching. And it's like my favorite thing ever. I think I will perpetually feel like I'm new to this because it's so exciting and so ripe for learning that I think I will just always have that sort of like, oh boy, I get to do this thing kind of vibe, which is how I feel every workday. Like, oh boy.
Because you are meant to be a helper, right? Like
Exactly.
this is the thing that those of us who get into social services in our early 20s, hello, like I used to, oh my God, I could not separate myself from my clients. That's why I quit doing clinical work, because I would be working with these kids and their moms, and it would just, I had a line on the pavement where I was like, turn it off, turn it off, turn it off, turn it off. Like I had no coping skills. And nobody, by the way, none of my bosses ever gave me coping skills.
Yeah.
I had to have a line where I was like, I'm not going to think about this anymore today, because I was hearing all that secondary trauma and all that shit.
Yes.
Plus, completely incapable of actually walking into a room and being like, what do you need?
Yes.
Because of course we've got the savior complex. We're going to save everybody, which is what you said earlier, right? Like, I'm just going to come in and help these children. No.
You are welcome, children.
And then we shut off that helper thing. But it's what we're here to do, right? Like it's all the time I'm talking about our divine assignment and what we're here to do. And I think it's just really telling. I love that our stories are so similar. It makes me happy. That you go through a bunch of other stuff before you fall back into that divine assignment again.
Yes.
So,
and we don't get to know how that's going to happen, right? We don't get to know ahead of time how our windy, weird, wiggly path is going to take us where we need to go. We just have to keep taking step after step after step, right?
Yeah, just fall right into it. The act of rebellion, the ultimate act of rebellion, is to listen to your purpose instead of listening to everybody else.
Amen.
So good.
Yes. I wish I could high five you right now.
Well, let's high five. Perfect. Why is now a good time to raise hell? Speaking of rebellion. Why now? Right now. Here we are. For those of you listening, we are at the end of 2020. 7 days out from probably the most critical election next to the 2016 election in America's history. For those of you listening later, why is now a good time to raise hell?
Oh my gosh, just like you mentioning all that stuff, like it just made my chest and my stomach just went, oh, like, oh. And I gotta say though, I'm gonna take it. To me, it's even less about what a critical and interesting moment this is in history, and it is both. And it's much more about like everything about every successive now. This is this now, this second in time, whether this moment that we're recording it or 5 years from now when somebody randomly runs across it and is watching it, like this is the moment where the action is happening. And I think we spend so much time waiting to be ready, right? My 2 years of waiting to be ready to be a coach. You know what I mean? But like, this is the time, right? And I think one of the things that hangs us up, in addition to like the perfectionism thing, right, is feeling like it's enough when any step is a step, any movement is a movement, even if the movement is getting quiet for a second, even if the movement is bringing curiosity for a second, or phone banking or whatever, right? Whatever it is that is meaningful in this now, this is where the action is. So this is not only a great time to be a HellRaiser, but it is the time. It is the only time.
I love what you just said about silence, by the way, because I don't know if you've noticed, I'm a little loud.
I love that about you.
And I love that about me too. I have been told my whole life to be quiet. Like, you're being too loud, you're being too loud, you're being too loud. And it took me until I think I was 41 or 42 to be like, oh no, this is actually my tenor. So y'all just need to get on the Missy Bird train, because I'm not going to be any quieter than I am at this moment. but this idea of silence, I've actually had this come across a couple of times. Richard Rohr from the Center for Action and Contemplation, our Contemplation and Action, he has been writing some beautiful stuff about silence. And it's such an interesting thing, especially for those of us that defer to yelling and being loud. And like, that's my default. the idea that silence is a movement and an action is
Yes.
so important in hell raising because it means you're listening to whatever else is going on outside of you. Don't you think?
Absolutely. But I think, and in
Yeah.
addition to that, it's also listening to what's happening inside of us,
Yes.
right? And being really curious about where all of that's coming from, right? It's, to me, it is, okay. So I happen to be reading a book right now about the history of nonviolence.
Mm. What book is it?
That's what it is called, nonviolence. And oh, Mark, uh, I'll send you the author's name, right?
Yeah.
Yes, we'll put it in the comments for sure. And so much of that is about the power of stillness and the power of allowing ourselves to hear our own fear but not react from it.
Yep.
You know, which is what leads us to violence so often, is that I mean, it's the ultimate reactivity, right? Like, you're being violent toward me, so I'm going to be violent back. And nonviolence is about recognizing that within ourselves and making a conscious decision time and time again to make a different choice,
Yeah.
right? And to live into what we can be, and to live into the power of hell raising, of opting out, of taking a more conscious different choice or path.
I love that so much. And I love the idea. I was just actually narrating one of the worksheets for Rebel School.
Nice.
And one of the things I talk about, I love that your dog has decided to join in on this.
Dog's like, yes, I'm with nonviolence.
Yes. One of the things I talk about is getting up on your soapbox, and how a soapbox having a negative connotation is because the people who were getting up on soapboxes were suffragettes and people involved with the labor movement. And they would pile soapboxes up really high to project their voices out over the crowds that were gathering in the alleyways behind the factories, because they didn't have microphones or megaphones. So that's how they did it. So that's why it became negative to get up on your soapbox, because you were like preaching, right?
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things I talk about is going on a big ranty tear and like getting up on that soapbox and telling your fear that you're repeating yourself the same thing over and over. And that thing is your passion. Like, that's your connection. But then you get in this ranty tear, but then you take a big, deep centering breath and bring that breath back down into your heart. And then you act from that place, not the ranty tear space, which is all in your head, right? So if you like what you just said about there's power in stillness and acknowledging your fear and loving your fear, but not acting from fear.
Yes. Yeah. Cause like that is all a part of our humanness. And I think we have a really challenging norm of trying to divide our humanness into categories of acceptable and unacceptable.
Yes.
Instead of saying, this is all a part of my wholeness, and all of it is worthy, and all of it's beautiful, and I get to make conscious decisions about how I utilize it.
Yes. And we are all connected in that messiness.
Yes.
All of us are connected in the mess.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I
even
love that
we don't
about
like
us.
each other very much.
Totally.
So connected. All of humanity is connected.
Yes.
All right. What do you wish others knew about disruption?
Disruption is such a big, challenging word for a lot of people. And all it is, in my opinion, is non-normative behavior.
Ooh, say more.
So, okay, Amanda Palmer, you know, the fabulous musician Amanda Palmer. Of course, you know Amanda Palmer, right? I was reading her once, and she was talking about how, so like, she hasn't shaved in like a gajillion years, right? She gave up on leg and armpit shaving forever ago. And she was describing being on a subway and noticing someone noticing her body hair, and then noticing a part of herself feel uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. I thought, wow, like even Amanda Palmer, right? Even this like queen of badassery, right? Who like leads the way in disruption. Yep. Even she like had this moment of self-consciousness, right? And I thought, to your point of our interconnection, oh my gosh, we all have that messiness, right? And the only reason she felt that sense of discomfort is because our norm is that a woman shaves her body hair, which is so stupid, right? Take it to another time in history, another country, another culture, whatever, that's not even a thing, right? It's not even something we thought of. You know, you can look at it in terms of like this goofy Western, or whatever the right word is, ideal of like thin being beautiful, and then go to a country where food is scarce and having extra meat on our bones is beautiful, like, and shows wealth and prosperity, right? And here, if we're wealthy enough, then we get to spend lots of time at the gym and not have any body fat and have I mean, it's right.
Yeah.
It's goofy, and these are just norms, right? And yet we have so much pressure to not break norms. And so to break a norm, even when as simple as not shaving our freaking legs, right, is a form of disruption. And I think we can, I think it becomes easier, right? Not easy. I don't think disruption is ever easy, but I think it becomes easier when we remember that norms change over time. Norms change by culture. And the earliest people to break or change a norm are always considered outliers, when at some point they may well be considered innovators. Right? I was thinking the other day about how much we like optimism only in retrospect. So you give us, you give us like a picture of, Bill Gates sitting in his office for one with his secondhand desk and his little, paper banner that says Microsoft. And we're like, gosh, he just really was on to something, right? But at the time, his friends and family were like, Bill, get a real job, man. This is so stupid.
Yes. I love that so much, because Jim and I are in the process of building the Mermaid's Garden, right?
Yes.
And every step of the way, it's been, well, you can't have a retreat center and an aquaculture farm together. That's bananas. And I'm like, no, that's innovation. And, well, how are you going to get this funded, and how are you going to pay for it? And like and for me, it's all, of course, white heterosexual men who are in the investment field who keep doing this, right? We have our allies, but there's a lot of people who are like, you can't do that, you can't do that, you can't do that. And I'm sitting here going, you're kidding me that we can't connect the land, people, and healthy, sustainable food? Isn't this what you all have been talking about? Dear state of Oregon, P.S., get my message. Like, we can't talk about regenerating land and sustainability and all of these other things that people like give lip service to, and then look at me and be like, your optimism, that's not, no.
Yes. Which, by the way,
Steve Jobs and Bill Gates would have been like, nah, you're right, I'm just gonna go get a real job.
Exactly.
Ford? Hello.
Yes. All, yes. And for every one of them there, and every one of you, there are 500 who went, yeah, you're right, this is stupid.
That's right.
And that's tragic. You know what I mean? That is a damn shame.
We don't call that we don't call optimism. I love this. We like optimism in retrospect. Oh, that is so good, Sarah. Such a good nugget. And I think it's what stops so many people from not engaging in disruption and raising a little bit of hell.
Yes.
Because they're optimistic they can make the change, like they can feel it.
Yes.
Like, don't do that. What if you say something wrong?
Yeah, right. What if I make an ass of myself? Right? What if I don't want to get my hopes too high, because what if I'm disappointed?
Yeah. How do you use your intuition in your work?
I truly, deeply believe that all of the best coaching, and I don't use definitive words like all very often, but like in this case, like I believe that all of the best coaching is an intuitive flow. And so when I go into a coaching session and I'm like nervous about the session, or I'm thinking about the session or whatever, I take a few seconds and I take a few deep breaths and I say to myself, Rawz, all you got to be is the conduit, right? All I have to be is the conduit, right? And if I'm thinking about what I'm going to ask next, if I'm thinking about, the tools that I have, all of that stuff, then I'm out of the intuitive flow. And we might have a good session, but we're not going to have a great session. Like, ideally, I surprise myself just as much as I surprise the client, just as much as I challenge the client.
Yeah.
Right? Because I'm so in that intuitive flow. I'm so tapping into wherever all the wisdom lives, right? Some of it lives within me, but sure not all of it, right?
I got a good chunk of it conduit in here, but I got to tell you, I think it's all out there.
Yeah.
I love that so much.
Yeah.
Do you think that not understanding that idea of intuition and instinct and being a conduit is what stops so many people from shifting the way they operate in the world?
Absolutely, right? It's this cowboy mentality out of control that messes with America in particular so much, right? This idea that like we have to be like rugged individuals and do it all our own and pick ourselves up by our bootstraps, and we have to have all the information. The amount of times I hear people stopped because they are not perfect people yet. They don't have perfect information yet. Their lives aren't perfect yet. I can't do the things until all that happens. I can't make the changes. And it's not a thing, right? Perfection is not it's not going to happen, friends, right? I get it. I want it too, and I can tease myself about it now, but it was really painful until I did enough work to be able to tease myself about it, right? And I see that pain in other people, right? But if we can see ourselves as conduits, if we can accept that we have access to wisdom that we are not consciously aware of, frees everything up, right? We stop being so responsible. Have you seen Elizabeth Gilbert's TED Talk on the Muses?
I have seen it, but maybe for people out in the world that are going to watch this, maybe they haven't seen it.
Yeah, Google it, like pause this,
in the notes too.
Google Elizabeth Gilbert, come back. But what I love about that so much is she wants to bring, she advocates for bringing back the idea of muses such that we're not individually responsible for our creative output, but we're a conduit, right? We're allowing it to flow through us. Yeah. And then if we have a success, then like, cool, I had a success. That's nice. And if we fall flat, then it's like, okay, that one wasn't a great flow.
Yeah. What I really love, perfection is the enemy of the good, right? Like it's
totally
this idea that we live in a perfect world. I'm always telling my clients, I'm like, just do me a favor and look outside. Tell me anywhere in the natural world. I'm not talking your house, buildings, cars, any of that stuff. In the natural world, where is anything perfect?
Yes.
Trees are imperfect, and we expect them to be imperfect, right?
Yes.
Birds are imperfect. Grass is imperfect. Everything. Our eyeballs are different shapes. Our hands are different shapes. We're not. I mean, hello, not perfect. Nothing is perfect in the natural world. We have created systems and like things that say we have to be perfect, and that's how the patriarchy thrives. That's how we keep people down and in their place, and that's how we silence powerful, rebellious HellRaisers who want to listen to that calling and to that conduit and like tap into that and do the thing.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
So yeah, totally.
Absolutely. It's such a problem, and it really plays into like the whole discord of the dynamic, right? Yeah. It makes me think of like, I heard somebody refer to themselves recently as like, I'm not really a good artist, it's just a hobby. And I thought, who gets to decide that? Yeah. I mean, if she's decided about herself, okay, like you've decided about yourself, you're limiting yourself in that way. That's your right.
Sure.
I might not make that choice for you. I wouldn't, but like, that's your right, but like, whose values are we gauging our own lives on?
Right.
If it's not our own, we got some work to do, right? Some really powerful, juicy, wonderful work. Yeah. With some work.
Yeah. I mean, imagine if Mozart would have been like, I'm just playing the piano.
Yeah, I'm just noodling around.
Please, nobody ever distribute this to anybody.
I'm so embarrassed, If that was a sharp, I meant for it to be a flat. It's so embarrassing.
All the art out in the world, all the writing out in the world, all the conversations out in the world, because without it, the world is so bleh.
Yes.
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 So good.
So good. Exciting. Yes.
Miss Sarah B Rawz, raw meat magic. I cannot. What is making you smile right now?
Oh, I love my dog. I'm very aware of her right now because she's been barking a lot. But what's truly making me smile a lot is there's sort of like the really big and the really little. So the really big is I was listening to a TED radio hour recently about environmentalism. And one of the speakers, and I wish I could remember his name, but I can't right now. But one of the speakers alluded to, he used the phrase gritty, determined, stubborn optimism. And I am so hard loving on that. Like I like write it every day as a reminder to myself. And to his point, you know, that optimism, we think of it as a character trait, but like so many character traits and so many skills, it's something that we get to exercise. It's something we get to choose, you know? And so I can choose every day. And I think that's especially relevant now on October 28th, 2020, right? As we go careening into this next presidential election, to just choose like gritty, determined, stubborn optimism. And paired with that, and it tied into something I was thinking about right at the time I listened to this podcast. I love when that synergy happens, right? Is love in the way that the 60s, you know, give or take, civil rights activists talked about love, which was not like, oh, warm, fuzzy, I just want to cuddle you. It was like, you person, you people, you society that's oppressing me, I am going to choose to love you because that's who I want to be. That's how I feel good about me. And because you may be able to control my ability to vote right now, you may be able to control my ability to where I live right now, you may get to control a lot of stuff about my life, but you don't get to control what happens in here. And everything that you're doing is trying to make me hate you. And I'm not going to let you do that. I'm not letting you get in here.
Where did that fall away? Because I think that's so, I mean, honestly, that message of universal love is so critical and so important to connect and to connection.
Yeah.
And we've just totally, I mean, I wonder if it happened when the Reverend Martin Luther King got shot. Like, I wonder, where did that love, I think Carter tried to carry it on a bit, but that love in the civil rights movement, that universal connection to love, we don't talk about that. We rarely talk about that in 2020.
Yeah,
and we
absolutely.
definitely need it. I think that's really, I also would love to say gritty, determined, stubborn curiosity.
Ooh, good one. Oh, I like that too. That totally works.
Combine that with the optimism, like being curious and getting curious and questioning about stuff. Ooh.
It goes with the optimism and the love, right? If I can be curious about the people that I want to perceive, that I instinctively and reactively perceive as my enemies or my opposition, right? I'm gonna find a reason to love them. There's nobody I can't find a reason to love, or at least a reason to have empathy for. You know, if I try, if I bring the curiosity.
Yeah. Oh, so meaty good. If people want to know more about you, where can they find you?
They can find me. I'm an anachronism a little bit. I got off of social media recently. Not recently, in the last couple of years. I knew it wasn't like the best business decision, but like I decided my well-being was much more important than my business, and that my business was fueled by my well-being. So
turns out your business is still running, so I think you're okay.
Still rocking it over at rawzcoaching.com. So raw, like raw meat with the Z at the end, because oh my gosh, there's something about a Z. I don't know what it is, but I love a Z. Coaching.com, where I have my bigger, badder community. It's awesome. My community of people who read my newsletter and they come to my weekly chomp and chat, and we hang out and we share together and live into our web of interconnection.
So great. I love it so much. Sarah, thank you so much for being with me today. I love you.
I love you. Thank you for making this space and for helping us all share wisdom and connect with each other.
Yay. And for those of you who want more information about Natural Born Rebel, go to my website at www.naturalbornrebel.com and download my free book, Natural Born Rebel. It's got some journal prompts that'll help you engage in changing the world. Have a beautiful day.